Hi everyone, we're so excited that Beth can join us for our next video interview for the course. As always, as I've introduced all of our presenters or panelists, if you will, how we met, and Beth and I actually met during a webinar that ACUI was hosting online about parents, and that was several years ago. I don't even know how long at this point. And over those probably 5 years, it's probably been, Beth and I have connected on social media. I moved to Massachusetts, and so then our connection even got a little closer just in distance. I happened to be at a student conference and we were tweeting together, and she's like, "You're here, I'm here, we should connect." And so we connected at a conference called All of the Above in person for the first time. And since then, we have presented at conferences together. We've been at other, NHTI. She was a faculty member and I was a participant. And so our connection has just sort of furthered along the years, but it did definitely start with social media. And so it's really cool to have Beth joining, just not this course, but helping me out as well, and seeing how far our connection has strengthened. And so Beth, thanks so much. And this is time for your intro.
You're welcome, Megan. I'm glad that I could help. I'm Beth Moriarty. I am currently the Director of Residence Life and Housing at Bridgewater State University in Massachusetts. I am also a part-time faculty member in our Student Affairs Counseling program, and I am the program coordinator for that program. So I do a lot of recruitment. And I guess when Megan and I met, I was pretty new to social media, and I'll have to say that I went kicking and screaming. I was very slow to jump on the bandwagon. And even today, I use Twitter and I use Facebook, but it's kind of the limit of how far I've gone in social media. And I'll be really honest, I first got on Facebook not as a student affairs professional, but as then of a parent of a 14-year-old. And if she was going to be on social media, I had to see what she was doing. And I got on Twitter one day because Ed Cabellon kept kind of saying I should, and he said he had come to my grad class and done something on technology, and he told my class that if I started an account, he would take me out to lunch at my favorite restaurant, which people who know me on social media know it's a little Thai place in Bridgewater called the Chatterbox. So I was homesick with strep throat one day, and I thought, okay, I'll set up this Twitter account. And Kathy Holbrook, who was my former supervisor, she's now the vice president of student affairs at Mass College of Liberal Arts. She saw that I created an account, and she immediately said, "Welcome, Beth Moriarty, to Twitter." And all these people started to follow me. So I felt like I had to say something. And that's when I kind of got involved with social media. So it's been really interesting. And I would say I'm a convert.
Great. All right, Beth, well, we're going to go ahead and get started with our first question. This one is sort of around just what you've seen as social media engagement on college campuses over the last couple of years, particularly as your role as being a CHO. And then if you could expand upon that and talk about what you think the future holds for social media on college campuses.
You know, Megan, I have to have you repeat the question.
Sure.
Because we had a tech problem there and I didn't quite hear everything.
Great. So we're looking at just the current trends that you have seen with social media usage on the college campus, particularly given your role as a CHO and how you've seen it come ahead, what you've seen with some of the changes just in how maybe students respond to requests when it comes to maintenance requests, or how social media has been integrated more into your department. And then further, how you see the future of social media on the college campus.
Okay. I'm one of those people that like to start with the second question first sometimes, because I think the future is really unknown. And that's the scary part for me sometimes about social media, is that it changes so fast. And maybe that's a little bit of my reluctance, and maybe that's my age playing in, but that's why I feel like I can manage two platforms right now. So I have Facebook and I have Twitter. I have Google Plus, but I'll be honest, I don't go on there very often. But every day it's something new. Snapchat and Yik Yak, and so it's really interesting. And I think that there's some positives and negatives I see as a CHO. I really have found Twitter and Facebook to be a wonderful way to engage with students that may not come into our office in other ways. There's a whole different population. There are those students who are very comfortable walking in the office and asking their questions, and the ones who use email and who contact us in those traditional ways that the university puts out there. But then there's those students that will, sometimes it starts with a complaint on Twitter or on Facebook, and they're really surprised when I'm the director and I'll respond to their complaint and say, why don't you come in and talk to me? Or this is what you need to do to fix this. Or I'll say, complaining about a broken laundry machine on Facebook isn't how to get it fixed. And I'll send them the link. And they're really surprised that, wow, the director of Residence Life just answered me on social media. And I think those have been some of the positives. I think some of the scary things for me have been some of the anonymous sites. Yik Yak, I download the app and I'll get on there and look at what people are talking about and thinking about. And half the time I'm like, why did I even open this? I don't want to know this. But I'm concerned about some of the anonymity in social media for our students. And I think that's something we have to really watch for the future and how we're going to really address those areas. But I think overall, it's been a really great thing for me and for my staff to connect with students kind of where they're at in a different way. That student that may be just as afraid to walk in the door and ask their question, and we can answer it for them.
Great, fantastic. We do talk about a little bit of Yik Yak, and some campuses were for a while saying, we have a Yik Yak problem. Oh no, you have a problem with what's being maybe posted. So is it a social justice issue? Is it people understanding what they can and can't say when it comes to Title IX and harassment and some of those things that they make us uneasy? But I think some ways that Yik Yak has I've seen been useful is almost as an assessment tool. It's a quick assessment to say right, like what is happening? What's the pulse of our campus right now? And what are the topics that we need to be focusing on, or the issues? And sure, Yik Yak has a lot of things that it could not be a student, could be a faculty member, could whatever, but it doesn't matter. Like those students are seeing those topics, and so for they're going to think that that is a student posting. And so we could take that as a way to do some refocusing or making sure what is the next program that needs to happen, or if an RA is searching for a topic, I would even go back to say, well, on Yik Yak they were talking about this. What can we do to kind of negate that as well? But again, I think a lot of campuses were saying, let's ban it, but that's not the solution because these aren't going to go away. They're only going to continue. So that effective online leadership of citizens, of bystander intervention online is really where I think we can, as professionals, take the next step versus just avoiding those apps and social media.
Absolutely. And we talk about being on the same page as you were talking, I was about to say, but the one positive I find is, it's great qualitative assessment in that you do get a sense of what people are talking about. And I think I shocked my RD staff when I, on Wednesday nights, we have RHA meetings. They're going to just keep ringing through. And when we're going to have to edit this part out.
Cool.
Sorry.
Okay, we can tell it's easy.
Okay, we'll start again. So I think the whole assessment piece with Yik Yak is the value part that people sometimes miss. Wednesday nights is our Residence Hall Association meetings, and so I had gone to RHA and I was having dinner with a couple of our RDs, and they were really surprised when I pulled out my phone and I opened up Yik Yak and I was sharing some stuff that was on there, and they were like, you have Yik Yak? And I'm like, well, I'm not out there posting. I said, but I think that we get a really good sense. And it was last spring and it was room selection, and I said, I've been watching it all week, and what are people saying about room selection? Because we do the survey after room selection, but it's really skewed data based on whether or not they got their room that they wanted or not, and the timing piece. I said, but I get a really good sense of what worked and what didn't work. I mean, my preference would be to be able to dialogue with those students a little bit more. And that's where I find on Facebook and Twitter, I know who I'm speaking to, and I can say, well, tell me about your experience and how I can fix it. But at least I can look for trends on Yik Yak and say, there's something we need to be looking at. So I haven't written it off. I don't like some of the stuff that I see on there, but I think that, we still can use it as a data gathering tool.
So given your role, how have you seen social media play out with faculty and parents? And what have been some things that you've seen that maybe have been successful in those connections? Where do you think, as a parent, as a college, you have a student in college as well as high school currently, if you could just speak from those two perspectives about how professionals can either engage those two populations or some ways that you've seen social media integration be helpful in connecting with two of what we always deem as like the hard populations, or people that we're afraid to connect with, sometimes the faculty and the parents.
Well, Megan, I think you know that, working with parents is a passion of mine, and my dissertation research was around how to partner with parents. And so I try to market our social media to parents as a way that they can monitor what's going on campus without doing stuff for their student. So, I share our social media accounts with parents at open houses, at orientation, and when I'm talking to them about levels of involvement, I say, here's a perfect way to be involved on the fringes. You can follow our account on Twitter, you can like us on Facebook, and then you'll know that there's weekend activities that happen. And when your student says nothing happens here on weekends, instead of call my office and saying, nothing happens on your campus on weekends, why aren't you doing more? You can have a conversation with your student. Really, nothing? I thought I read something on their Facebook page, and then list off 5 or 10 things that are happening. So I really try to engage with the parents about how it's a way that, no, I'm not going to send you a letter home with all the deadlines for your students, but I post them on social media so you'll see them. And, if you want to remind your student because that's the relationship that you have with your student, then fine, that's a way that you can do that. But no, my office isn't going to send those reminders to you because we're going to deal directly with your students. So I think we've engaged fairly well with them in those areas. Not all parents have social media, and I think that's the key with all of this is a way to get to a portion of the population, even with our students. Not all students use social media, so it's not to replace using email as an official institutional communication tool. It's not, if I put it on Facebook, you're held responsible for knowing that deadline. It's an additional tool, and I think it's the same with parents. I don't have a lot to add of how I've engaged with faculty on our campus. I would say our faculty, in my experience, have not necessarily embraced it. I can talk a little bit about my role as a faculty member in a grad prep program, and I've tried really hard to introduce social media to my students. Because a lot of them come in as, they're grad students about to enter the profession, and they have a lot of fears about using social media. I won't friend my students on Facebook, and I won't follow them on Twitter until they do that to me. But it's really kind of funny when you have a class of 15 and one person sends your friend request and you accept it, and then in the next hour, like everybody in class, I'm wondering, are they sitting there texting each other saying, "Wow, she just accepted my friend request"? So it's really interesting the way that happens. But we'll use it in class, particularly Twitter. If we're talking about a certain topic, I'll put it out early in the day and say, this is what we're talking about tonight, my grad class. What advice can you give them on this topic? And then we'll put it up on the screen and kind of go through. And then I really market it to them as a networking opportunity. Like, here are some folks, like if this spoke to you, what this person said about this, you can follow them on Twitter. You can engage with them. So I've really, really tried hard to introduce social media platforms into my class as another way that they can network, particularly when grad students are talking to me about how they can't afford professional development, because they're still in that mindset that professional development means going to a conference. And so I share with them all the free webinars, the virtual roundtables, the essay chats, all the things that they can do. And then last spring in my Student Affairs Administration class, the Essay Connects group was actually doing an online Twitter chat during my class time. So we participated as an entire class. And so I would say about half my class had never participated in a Twitter chat. So, that's, I think, a great way that we've incorporated that into my class. I unfortunately don't have a lot on how I've used it to engage with other faculty, but hope that will help you out a little.
No, that was great. And I have followed your class before on Twitter and throughout the evening and seen, because you bring in great speakers, and I'm like, oh, I can use this. And I think you're right. Like, I've used that as professional development. Like, it may not be, I'm learning 1 or 2 tidbits or something to think about. And that is what it comes down to, is what you take away from it, not the overall grandiose experience, I think. And so we do talk about alternative professional development in the course a little bit. So that's a great added bonus. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. I think with that,
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, with that piece, with the professional development piece, I think that people have to understand that it's the follow-up. And I think you and I and how we met is a great example. You are a passive participant on a webinar, and something in the course of the webinar connected, and you reached out to me after. So a lot of people are like, oh, yep, I did this webinar online, and that was my professional development. But the reality is the piece was the follow-up, the questions that you asked, the connections that we made, and then we continued that relationship. So I think people have to understand with social media, it's a two-way street. It's not just kind of what you take from it, it's what you put in and what you give and what you put out there. You know, the sharing of resources, the sharing of information.
So I want to ask a follow-up question sort of around management of social media. And could you speak to how your office manages social media as far as is it you, is it a department committee? Do you have student workers? And I know we highlight Bridgewater State throughout the course a little bit just with you have a fantastic directory that the department has made or the campus has made to highlight all the social media. There's a great like, one of the best how-to manuals, if you will, has been created as well that we highlight. But could you speak just from experience about how the management happens of your platforms?
Sure. I'm doing probably more of it than I want to do right now, personally, because I was one of the earlier adapters of social media. And part of me enjoys it too. So I guess it's this double-edged sword. Like sometimes I'll say, oh, I don't have time for this. I'd like to build it into somebody's job description. But then I think that part of the piece that works well for a student is, it's kind of, I had a student the other day that said, it was funny, but he was like, I felt like I was retweeted by a celebrity because you're the director of residence life and you retweeted my tweet, and it made me giggle and I laughed a lot about it. But for him, it was a big deal. So you have to stop and think about that. When you're an undergraduate student, and you have RAs and you have RDs and the RD has an assistant director and, they consider my position being pretty far up there, and it humanized me for that person, that I actually was the person doing that. And then for a while, when we first had the departmental Twitter account, the RAs were all trying to guess who in the department was tweeting for us. And I was not who they were guessing, and so we kind of kept that going for a while. And so that part is kind of neat. I mean, we do have, in addition, so I pretty much manage the departmental Facebook page and the departmental Twitter account, although my entire management team are administrators on those accounts, but I tend to do it a little bit more than they do. But then the RDs have building accounts as well. And then RHA and NRHH come out of our office, and so the advisors to those groups. So we have a committee. We have a media and publications committee within the department that we have 2 RDs that oversee that committee. And it's not just about social media, it's about taking pictures at events. It's about lots of different pieces, but they keep a directory of all of our accounts, who has what the passwords are for the accounts if somebody leaves, so we don't have this Facebook page that suddenly nobody has access to. We use our senior resident assistants. Part of their job description is to post on the Facebook page. And then in the summer, because a lot of our incoming students post a lot, and we have like the class of Facebook pages, I usually have a student worker in the office that I ask them to monitor the page and respond. And if they know the answers, to respond for us. If they don't know, to talk to whoever in our office does, so to make sure it's somebody from Residence Life and Housing that's answering those Residence Life and Housing questions. So we're not great at it. We're learning every day what we're trying to do. We do have the handbook that the division has for the Division of Student Affairs. And different departments are at different levels in what they're doing, but I think we have a pretty good presence out there. Students know that the hashtag on our campus is #BSULife, and they tweet that all the time. And we've watched offices on campus that we didn't think were ever going to get on social media. I love seeing our Bridgewater University police are on Twitter now. We have a large commuter population, so they tweet at the beginning of the school year about parking availability and which lots still have parking. And so people have really embraced it on campus, and different administrators, and so students go looking for that. And we see our number of followers and the folks that like our page just increasing all the time. So we are getting to the point where you have to make sure it's in someone's job description, or it can get away from you.
I think what you said is so important, is that you have to do what works for your department as well. So Facebook and Twitter is what works for your department, what you can manage, because you could have all those different platforms available and you could have accounts, But if no one's managing those, it will go, it's probably the one PUFA of social media is to not be, posting consistently and having that presence. And like a website, if the website last thing isn't updated is a year ago, I'm not coming back to your website because can't trust that it's going to be updated. The same thing with your parents. If you're getting them to the Facebook page and nothing ever changes, then you've lost that group already. And so I think that you are doing a great job. And I think for departments out there, whether you're big or small, public or private, like you have to do what's manageable for you, for your department. And again, it goes back to that strategy. So the whole last module is about creating a strategy. And you have to start with, why are we doing social media? And what is the point? And what is our goals? And what's the outcome from that? Before you can just go and set up all these accounts, and it doesn't make sense and it gets messy. And I think it's great, even just the one document with all the passwords. The people leave and come and go, and that's part of our field. And so being organized just in that manner, so you don't have these dud pages. When I search Bridgewater State Residence Life, I don't get 6 different pages, and I don't know which one to use or like. And so I think that you've really that's a really important fact.
Yeah, I find we had an RD a couple years ago that she was really into Pinterest, and she had this great idea that we were going to have a Pinterest page. And once she left, nobody was really doing it. And the idea was that we would have ideas for how to decorate your room. We would show pictures of what's allowed and what's not allowed. And it was this great concept in theory, but it was just something that no one had time for. And it kind of went away. And so I think sometimes you have to be careful about when it's one person's passion, and everybody's not buying into it. It can be really difficult. I think some of the other ways with Facebook, we just have a closed group for the RAs, and it's a really easy way for them to communicate with one another. Programming resources. We're doing tie-dye over in our building. Before we go out and buy buckets and everything, does another building have those? When they post stuff there, and they'll do quick questions. And it was funny when one of the RAs first approached me and said, can we do a closed group for the RAs? I was like, well, why? Like, we have other ways to communicate, but it's just this really fast way to share information with one another, and they really enjoy it. And then the other group that we've been really successful is we have a Bridgewater Alumni Facebook group. And I use that extensively to talk with folks about, now it's telling me I need to upgrade software on my computer. Sorry. I use the alumni group pretty extensively to share information about events that are going on. So we just rededicated one of our residence halls, so I put an invite out there. I ran the Falmouth Road Race this summer as a fundraiser for our Student Emergency Fund. So I posted in the alumni group for donations, and I got a lot of dedicated alumni that donated to the scholarship because of that. And it's kind of this thing that literally the night of our end of the year banquet, I moved the graduates from the active group of current folks, and I moved them into the alumni, and it's become like this rite of passage. And they all said, oh, I just got moved to the RA alumni group. So it's really interesting.
Well, Beth, I think you have really answered our last questions, which are the 3 tips. You've given out so much great information throughout the whole interview, but is there any lasting comment that you want to say before we sign off? And it sounds like somebody really wants to get a hold of you. So
yeah, sorry about that.
It's okay. You're a very important person with things going on. So
that really doesn't ring that often. So like, that's really interesting. If my cell had started to vibrate over here, I would have known it was a real emergency, and I think I would have had to reschedule our time together. I think, again, we talked a little bit offline before we started the interview, and not knowing who's going to actually take this course, it's hard to give a tip not knowing who exactly you're speaking to. So I would imagine that there's some folks who are going through this that are very leery of social media. So my tip there would be just embrace it. Throw yourself in, get your toes wet, keep going a little bit deeper, find what works for you, and at least try it out. It's worth it in terms of the connections. I really value that there are some students that I have connected with on Facebook and Twitter on this campus that I don't think I would have connected with any other way, no matter how good or not I am at my job. So at least embrace it. And the other thing is just, it is always changing. So try to stay on top of some of it.
Great, Beth. Well, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Be sure to follow Beth. Your Twitter handle will be available for everyone, so hopefully you'll have some new followers following the course. And as always, again, thank you for your time.
You're welcome.